welcome to this course on developing executive skills. My name is Dave Hughes, and I'm going to be the presenter for the course material. Really looking forward to having this time with you. But before we launch in the material of the course itself, I wanted in this introduction to answer a few questions that you might have in your mind. First, why this material? Why are we covering these topics? Why talk about executive skills? Well, in the sort of spirit, we have excellent formation programs in our leadership formation tracks. We've got theological teaching that we find in our pastoral training institutes, which provide great theological foundations for what we do. We have a lot of great skill courses, like how to be a good pastoral worker, how to do evangelism, critical skills that we need in doing our service. But it's been my experience that leaders often need another set of tools, another kind of toolbox. These are more practical executive skills that also influence our ability to serve. They're more prosaic, more earthy, more mundane topics, but I think equally important for our service as leaders. So things like how to lead a good meeting, how to communicate, how to build consensus. Again, fairly practical, down-to-earth topics. Now, these may sound like simple, very basic ideas, but in my experience, often we don't do these things very well, and we don't receive much training in them. And as a result, our service to the Lord is less than it might be. So in this course, we want to give you some practical advice, tips, instruction on how to do these kinds of things. Let me raise another question, or perhaps an objection that some of you might have. And I've heard this because I've spoken on these topics in various venues. Some of you may know I spent 30 plus years in the automotive industry, where I had to use a lot of these skills, as well as around 40 years of doing leadership in our movement. So I've often heard the question, sounds like interesting material, Dave, but it's not very spiritual. Why do we want to take time to focus on these things? Does God really care about how well we lead meetings or how well we supervise others? Well, let me say clearly, we serve a jealous God. He wants it all. We serve a God who's concerned about excellence in all things. We serve a God who wants our service in the most mundane things to also glorify Him and to glorify His Son. You know, sometimes I think for Christians, we want to partition our lives into different spheres. So we have the spiritual part of our life, and then the more secular, right? We have the more exalted and the more mundane. And we often, in our own minds, partition our life into different categories. Well, brothers and sisters, this is not a Christian view of reality. God does not want partitioned lives. He wants integrated lives. And as I said, He's a jealous God. He cares about the whole of our lives. He's as keenly interested in how we lead a planning meeting as how we lead a prayer meeting. He's as keenly interested in how we supervise others as how we pastor others. He's a jealous God. He wants it all. So let me encourage you just to embrace this course in faith and ask God to help you improve in these areas that will help us to be more effective, more fruitful, more productive in our service to Him. Well, what kind of topics are we going to cover in the course? How are we going to go at it? Well, there's 6 main topics, and we may add a 7th a little bit later. Let me quickly go over each of those topics and give a word on each. We're going to begin with meetings. How do we lead? How can we lead effective meetings? Meetings are things we all participate in. How can we do a better job at that? Next, another critical skill for our leadership work is how do we build consensus amongst a group of people? How can we gain unity amongst a group and chart a new way forward? Next, we'll talk about the basics of supervision, and we'll talk about both some general aspects of supervision, but then some very detailed elements of supervision, like giving good assignments, monitoring performance, and giving clear, honest, and effective feedback. Next, we'll look at effective communication protocols, a key discriminator for leaders. The fifth session has a fairly cryptic title. I call it Writing with Your Left Hand. And in this session, we want to talk about how do we improve our weak areas, our blind spots perhaps, things that we don't do as well as leaders. It's like writing with your left hand. How can we make those things better? In the sixth and final session, we'll talk about strategy development, strategic planning. How do we confront the rapidly changing situations that we face and develop new strategies, new and effective strategies to cope with those changes? We're thinking about adding a seventh session as well on developing people, and so stay tuned for that potential addition. So there's three elements to going through this course. First is to watch these videos. They're short videos, 30 minutes or less. And then we've also designed the course to have people go through it together as part of a small group. So the second element of the course is to sit down with a group of your peers, talk about the material, discuss things, raise questions, and embrace the material through that format. The final element, and I think will be key to helping the material really get assimilated into your own life, is to sit down with a mentor. I call this having office hours. This is a chance to sit down with someone you trust, to go over the material, to apply it to your own life, talk about those weak areas or blind spots you might have, whatever it might be, but to kind of weave it into your own life and service. So three key elements: watch the videos, talk about it together with the group, and finally get some outside input. Well, let me close the introduction with two final observations. I've given this material in a lot of places and a lot of different venues, and I often hear the comments, boy, a lot of what you say is good, but it just seems so simple. Well, I'd say that's a pretty accurate observation. It's right on target. A lot of what we're talking about is pretty simple stuff. It's pretty straightforward. Yet my observation is that many leaders, both in work environments and in ministry environments, often fall short of being the leaders they could be because of a lack of attention or lack of mastery of simple, basic things. I could tell you 1,000 stories. And often leaders don't get feedbacks on these very basic things, and so they're a bit blind to things that they do. It's a lot like sports. How do you become good at any sport? Well, it's through disciplined repetition of the basics of the sport. And it's the same for leadership. So, it's simple stuff, but I think you'll find it's incredibly powerful as well. Final comment. Let me just encourage you. The things we're going to be talking about in this course are all learnable skills. That is, they're not gifts. Gifts are things that were given at birth through God's providence, and you either have them or you don't. Skills are things that you can develop and get better at. And everything we're going to be talking about in this course are skills that we can improve. Sometimes I run into people who say things like, well, I'm just hopeless at leading meetings. I'm just not any good at it, or, I just simply cannot plan. Well, that might be true. You might not be very good at leading meetings, but it's a skill that you can work on and improve. It's not a gift you've been given, it's a skill you can improve. In fact, we'll take up this whole topic in session 5, writing with our left hands. How is it that we can improve on our skills as leaders? So I think the course has a powerful formula. Simple wisdom in an applied environment where we can talk about it, get some mentoring input, all under the power of the Holy Spirit to really help us to be more effective in our service to the Lord and to His people. We serve a jealous God. He wants it all. He wants everything brought under the reign of His Son. So let's embrace this course in faith and hope, and may God bring to fruition all that He wants through us. Thanks, and we'll see you in session 1.